Why Sony's focus on single-player games is a great idea if you look at their upcoming lineup: Detroit Become Human, Horizon Zero Dawn, Last of Us Part 2, Spider-Man, Days Gone. They're all single-player games. Here to discuss with me is Zach Sharps. Hey man.
Well, hello there.
Hello, hello. So, of course, if you also look at the other PlayStation exclusive games and put them next to the Microsoft exclusive games, on the PlayStation side we have the games that are already released on PS4: The Order, Infamous Second Son, Uncharted 4, Bloodborne, Until Dawn. And if you look at the Microsoft games, Gears of War, Halo, and of course coming up, Crackdown has a multiplayer mode. So yeah, they are focusing pretty much on single player or on multiplayer games. Of course, Halo has a single player campaign, Gears too, but they are like mostly multiplayer games. Well, Sony is really banking on these single player exclusive experiences, and I think that this is a smart idea because there's just so much multiplayer competition. If you look at an Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, The Division, Call of Duty, Battlefield 1, Call of Duty of course releases yearly, so you also have Destiny, obviously a new one is coming up, and Sony has a lot of deals with them as well. They have exclusive content for Destiny, for Call of Duty, and you see them or their logo at the end of the trailer, so they market them a little bit as exclusives, while their own exclusive games are single player franchises, like really single player games. And I think that this is like a great idea because I think that a lot of people also are going on PC that are looking to buy a console. They probably have on PC their multiplayer games. PC is obviously a multiplayer platform. You go online, everyone has the same online, you don't have to pay. And there are a lot of huge games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Dota, other multiplayer free-to-play games that are just huge there. So, and you can't just focus all your time on one game. If you wanna like release a multiplayer game, you're like competing with all the other multiplayer games, because even if it's like a different genre, because a lot of you can just sink a ton of hours in Destiny 2 and also do it in Overwatch, right? So you have to balance that out. Well, with a single player game, you play it, have a great experience, and you're done. And for PC players, this might be like a great thing because they are playing League of Legends every day, but they sometimes want to experience this cinematic story, and they get that on the PS4. So, what do you think about my take on that? I think that Sony's focus on single player games is just a great idea for their exclusive games.
Well, I definitely agree with the reasoning because of the fact that, like you mentioned, multiplayer is pretty much already covered by multiplats, and then also people who want to play multiplayer games could also come on PC. There's a ton of them, a lot of them free as well, and then of course people buy into them with just unlocking things quicker and whatnot, or just supporting the dev by getting cosmetics and whatnot. So there's a lot of that on the PC, and PC, just MMO and PC games in general. Discounting casual web games in 2016 accounted for 26.7 billion. I would probably say half of that or more is probably the online games and multiplayer games, because that's like the market that's really good on the PC space. Then the casual web games, most of those are multiplayer as well, so that is sort of cornered there as well. With consoles, standard consoles, you have basically 29 billion in total revenue, which also accounts for just a bunch of like all the platforms and all the games and whatnot. So you have a situation where one particular platform in the computer is sitting at 31.9 billion, mostly made off of multiplayer games. A ton of it is multiplayer games, and then the other one is 29 billion, which is, I would probably say, more split. But one particular sub-platform in the PlayStation 4 is more focused on sort of single-player experiences, where the other one is sort of being lumped in with all the other billions in revenue in multiplayer experiences, at least mostly multiplayer experiences. And so you have a situation where one's hopping into a super saturated market and not distinguishing itself in the Xbox. The other one in the PlayStation 4 is distinguishing itself and creating a value proposition and a reason for people on the other side, aka the Xbox and even the PC, to hop over and at least purchase their platform to play those particular experiences that may be different from the competition from their their home platform. So there's definitely a value proposition there to hop to Sony's platform because of those experiences, and I think
Yeah.
that definitely does help them out a lot, because it's whenever you go to E3 and you just have, and I'm just going to keep reiterating this because it just wowed me, when I watch an E3 conference and I don't have like any breaks in between, no talking or anything, and it's all trailers of games, that just makes me want to like applaud and buy your platform. That is what gamers want, and that's what Sony's doing, is they're just overloading you with a lot of games. But I don't necessarily agree that that's like they shouldn't also do multiplayer. I wish that they would do more multiplayer as well, like a little bit, because of the fact that single player games, especially for me lately, they just exhaust me, because you have to spend so many hours in just one game to complete it and feel like you got your money's worth. Where with like Rocket League, I have like 600 hours in that thing, because I can hop in for like a half hour, feel fulfilled, and then hop out of it, and then hop back in, at my earliest convenience. Where with a single player game, if I hop out of it for too long, I feel way too detached and not immersed anymore, because I'm not sort of getting a full experience when I sit down and play. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely, and yeah, I can see that, but that's why I think that you mentioned a Rocket League. Why should Sony like compete with that type of game that you can play for half an hour, while the like single player part of the industry, it's I mean there are obviously single player games. We saw Dishonored 2, Watch Dogs of course has a multiplayer, but it's mostly a single player game. We saw a lot of those types of games as well, but I still think that Sony, the cinematic value for example from a Naughty Dog, only they can really do it. So it would be a shame if they would focus on a multiplayer game. And we also see it with Insomniac that's now making Spider-Man. They're like mostly a single player company. So I would totally love to see them do single player games. The same goes for Quantic Dream. They're making Heavy Rain type of games. They're doing the same with Detroit. Horizon, I mean, that's a single player RPG. And while I would love to see some sort of multiplayer aspect for that, I can totally see it that they, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I like that those games can be beaten and can be done and can be experienced, and then you can go back to your multiplayer games. I just like that type of thing. Well, I think that Microsoft is like, it's not pretty smart to release a new Gears or a new Halo game and then a week later the new Call of Duty comes out, because obviously if you look at those games, I mean, okay, the like the last Halo looks even more as a Call of Duty game, but still it's like a sci-fi game and they have different modes. It's totally different weapons, but you still have to make this. Okay, a lot of my friends are playing Call of Duty and I want to play Halo, but I want to play with my friends, so I'm going to play Call of Duty, and you're gonna sink a lot of hours into that because you don't want to have like some split progression. You also want to sink a lot of hours into one game, and that's just why I like this Sony strategy as well. And people indeed say they should make a multiplayer game as well, but Sony's multiplayer shooter, for example, Killzone, it's just not at that same level as a Call of Duty or Battlefield. So why bother if you can also have Call of Duty as your marquee shooter title with DLC coming a month earlier? That's like a huge deal for that community. Why don't you let them focus on this Horizon single player game that looks super promising? And so they, I mean, they're not like not making multiplayer games, just an Uncharted for multiplayer. Like that's like the biggest things they do. And some people just love the Uncharted franchise so much, but I just like that they're not like, for example, pushing, because they could have made a Days Gone multiplayer. They could have done that. They could have pushed that, because on the Microsoft side you have State of Decay, and that's like mostly a multiplayer co-op game that you go out and kill some zombies. Lost
Dead
Part
Rising.
2. Yeah, exactly. And Lost Part 2, that will also probably have a multiplayer game. We don't know right now, but it's focused on the single player, and for people that want that multiplayer experience or want to live in that world for a longer time, but not play the same content over and over again, you have this multiplayer. So I just think their strategy is just super smart, because Blizzard is pushing Overwatch with new events and stuff like that, and Rainbow Six is getting new events. You get For Honor coming up. Like I said, Destiny 2 will be huge. I just think it's way smarter to just promote those games than to, because I think single player games, they don't really compete, because you of course have the same genres. They do compete a little bit, and of course every entertainment competes for people's time, but just like, it's smaller. If you look at it from a smaller view, I don't think that all the single player games, because you can play Horizon, if that is finished, you can go to Mass Effect, right? Even if there's like a few weeks in, or like if they release like weeks from each other. So I just think that this is a smart thing. But do you agree with the like vacation part of it, that people look at it and see, okay, I can, you for example say, okay, I play a lot of Rocket League, or maybe Rocket League is not the best example because you just play it for a few rounds and that. So for example, you have this new MMO or something like that, you sink a lot of time in that, and you're kind of gone, but you still want to play it, you still want to be invested, but you also want to have some sort of other experience that is 10 hours and then you're done. Don't you think that that's also like, a great thing?
For me, as like before, if you were to ask me this probably a couple years ago, I probably would have said that's, basically sort of what I enjoy about single player games, is you can sort of play for 10 to 30 hours depending on how long the game is. With The Witcher 3, it was, I think I finished it in 50 hours or whatever. That game was long.
Whoa.
But it was so good. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it nowadays, I mean, with having limited time, already have played a lot of single player games as is, so I kind of look at these games more critically in terms of, do I actually want to spend my time with this thing or move on? I don't know, like it's hard for me to, like, I was looking at some of the PlayStation 4 games that I have currently, like with Uncharted. I want to finish that. For some reason I misplaced my disc though. I don't know. I opened the case and it was missing. I'm like, where the hell did this thing go? Did I leave it on my
Digital
old
for the
PS4
win?
or something? I don't know.
Oh, that would have said that.
I know, that's what I'm thinking though. I'm like, where'd it go? But yeah, I look at that and I look at the Uncharted collection. I bought that originally wanting to play through it all again, but I'm like, do I really want to spend the time knowing that I know all the story already? Do I really care to? And then I, have Gravity Rush 2, and I played that for a couple hours last night. Fun so far, but I looked it up, the time to beat it, and it's 17 hours. I'm like, it's such a long time. Like, the hours is in my mind, they hit me harder now than multiplayer games do, even though I spend a hell of a lot more time in multiplayer games.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
It's just because for me, and I feel a lot of people are this way, which is why multiplayer is just amazing nowadays for money. I mean, you look at the PlayStation 4 totals in terms of units sold, the top one is Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and then the second one after that is Grand Theft Auto 5, which sure had a single player, but the online is thriving still. And then the next three, actually four after that, are all multiplayer, primarily FIFA 17, FIFA 16, Star Wars Battlefront, and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And all that 7 million and above, the next one under that that's single player, and that's when we get into the more single player, is Fallout 4 at 7.4 million, and Uncharted, and then we have another FIFA game, and then another Call of Duty game, and then Destiny, Battlefield 1, and then Last of Us. So single player games, they sell less, and I think that's because people see it as more of a time commitment in terms of staying immersed in the game, and in terms of fully enjoying the game. Because a lot of people, when I hear about, like a new game releasing, especially a single player game like an Uncharted, I'm going to take a day off for this. They know they have a time commitment there. They want to experience the whole thing front to end, without having any interruptions or very limited interruptions. And that's also like with a movie. Like if you had like a movie, for instance, that, ended up being, 10 or 12 hours long, like a Netflix show, for instance. people don't like to wait to finish that. It's a huge phenomenon with Netflix now, where if they release a season, people binge watch through the entire thing the first day it's out. And I think that's the same thing with these single player games, is people want to binge through the entire thing, and because they want to, it's more of a commitment, which is why they go back to the multiplayer games that are shorter experiences. But because they're shorter experiences and they feel less committed to it, they end up spending more time in it because they don't feel like it's draining as much as their day away. So that's sort of the psychology that I think about when I think of single player versus multiplayer. And so I think it's smart to distinguish your platform with, single player games. Money-wise, though, with Uncharted 4 being half the total of Call of Duty Black Ops 3 in terms of global sales, granted, one came out 2015, the other one 2016, but still 7.28 million in Uncharted 4 compared to Call of Duty at
it's more
14.8.
now though, but yeah. Still.
But when the VG chart sort of took this in, that's a pretty sizable difference, I think, to sort of argue that people want these multiplayer experiences a bit more.
Yeah, but
in terms
I don't
of
think
money.
that. Yeah, I totally agree, but I think that that market is already settled on these games, and I think that if you release, because we also see it with Battleborn, for example, that's a multiplayer game, and on paper it should have done really well. MOBAs are really popular.
No, that was dead on launch as soon as they put a price tag on it.
No, I know, but on paper, like MOBA, first-person shooter, and the creators of Battleborn, right? Like,
because of Borderlands, you mean?
Or Borderlands, yeah. And of course, it did not do well because right now you don't have any. There's no room for any new multiplayer games. I mean, Overwatch did a great job at finding themselves in people's minds, and Rainbow Six as well, because Rainbow Six of course offers a totally different experience, and Call of Duty is less than it was like a few years back. So I think that if you don't want to compete with them, you just want to leave them alone. And in Sony's case,
I do want to just say I'm not arguing for like them to do a ton of multiplayer games. I would just like to see one fully fledged multiplayer game from them, because I think
Death Stranding though will
Yes.
be a multiplayer game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see sort of how multiplayer it is. I mean, right now it's just sort of what he said, and he hasn't really said too much about it. But I mean, if that turns out to be a fully fledged multiplayer game that's not just sort of like co-op and that's pretty much it, then that will fulfill sort of that want for me for them to go into it. Because the reason why I want them to go into it is because they have such a strong single player game. I want them to carry that over to a multiplayer game, because that's a recipe for success in my opinion. If they bring the story elements that have made all their single player games so successful and all their IPs that are single player so successful over to a multiplayer game that is just as high quality, that is a bit distinguished from the rest of the multiplayer games out there, like they add twists to different things with the genre that they choose, I think that could be a very popular game and continue to generate income for them just off of like DLC or cosmetics or just random microtransactions if they sell it at the right price. So I'm just saying one, but if Death Stranding fulfills that, then
From what I hear, I think it will be a little bit like a Division type of game, but that's from what I hear.
Yeah.
But still, it's interesting. I think that right now with the new consoles and because the social aspect is of course another huge thing, and on the PlayStation 3 it wasn't even possible to talk with each other like in an easy way. You could not join a party and just talk away. Well, with the PS4, this of course, this is the case. You can do that. So those multiplayer games you can experience them on a way different level for a console, while on the PC of course you could do this with way before this, but still for consoles it's interesting. And a lot of people want these types of games, and now with the console getting to this sort of level, games like Destiny and games like The Division can work. So that's super interesting, and we will see them continue. And Ubisoft, for example, is really going this route with all their games are multiplayer focused, and they really believe that this is the future. But I think that, for example, for Honor there's a place, right? Because that's a new game. I can't experience that gameplay elsewhere. Well, for example, games like Ghost Recon Wildlands, they've coming up. It's like a third-person shooter where you join a group of 4 people, and of course the world is different, the setting is different, but the gameplay, it's the same as the Division, for example, if you look at it. So it's, I mean, and other shooters. That's why I would be interesting, for example, to see if Borderlands 3 will be a success, because that is of course coming, but we already have Destiny now, and we know how a loot shooter is now. So why will you do you want to invest in Borderlands 3? That's like we don't know really what they're going for. Maybe they're going for a Destiny type of online game as well. Well, of course, the first one was just a single player story you walk through and friends can join in. But I don't think that, there's like so much room for this, and there's so much time, and we don't. There's also Netflix, and there's also a lot of other stuff that we can pay our spend our free time on. So I think that with Destiny 2 being huge, Call of Duty, Battlefield 1 will continue to be huge throughout this year. Rainbow Six, For Honor will probably be big. Overwatch will continue to push new content. It's getting harder and harder for new multiplayer games to find their footing. And Uncharted, that's just a big name. The Last of Us multiplayer, big name.
Yeah.
But
for
example, Halo.
Before you get into Halo, I do want to say that I do applaud Uncharted 4 for enhancing the multiplayer experience that game had, because that's one thing that definitely does keep people playing it. And then maybe down the road, if Naughty Dog and Sony are smart, maybe they'll just split off the multiplayer as a free experience. You know, everyone's already bought it. Why not make it free to play? I think they did with that Uncharted 3. Yeah, and there's microtransactions. So anyone who hasn't bought the game, which I just checked the sales number, it's like 8.79 million in 2016. Then the rest of the people might hop in it because it would be a third-person shooter, you know, and that might be more compelling for people who maybe didn't care about the single-player campaign, maybe just want to try out a new third-person shooter because they really enjoyed their other multiplayer game that they were recently playing, and end up buying some microtransactions, maybe be compelled by the characters they're playing, and then maybe eventually get the single-player game when it's on sale for like $20-$30 as well. And so I think there's definitely some room with that. That I think they should explore more than they have in the past. I mean, it took them a bit, if I remember correctly, to do that with Uncharted 3. And so I would like to see them do that with Uncharted 4, you know, fairly soon. That way they could keep that game alive, because the multiplayer is so well tuned now and is much more enjoyable than the previous game. So I think they were smart to give it a little bit more time this time around. So
and to round out this topic a little bit, I mean, I think that it's smart what Sony is doing, and that also shows you, you also see that if you look at the Microsoft games, because Halo and Gears, they're not as huge as they were before, because before there was not a lot of competition on these platforms. And maybe if you have an Xbox One and some of your friends have a PlayStation and stuff like that, if you all play Destiny, you can still talk about the same game. While with Gears, you're just stranded on this platform, of course also on PC, but you're stranded on these platforms. And I think that multiplayer or multi-platform multiplayer games have just a stronger resonance with people, and can grow bigger because they are on multiple platforms and a lot of people know them. So if you go to a party, just a random thing, but you can talk about this game and you are on the same level, even if you don't play on the same if you don't play on the same platforms. And of course, when Gears came out, when Halo came out, there was not a lot of competition, but right now it's different, and you see that those games are struggling. It's of course also because they're not with the same developers anymore, stuff like that. Microsoft has some things going on, but still, it's interesting to see that Halo is not as big as it used to be. It was huge when Halo 3 came out. Everyone went crazy. It was a big launch. Well, this right now, it's just they have it, and you still remember the name, and Master Chief is still a thing, but it's not as big anymore. So
it's all 343's fault. Fuck you, 343.
Anyway, I really look forward to the PlayStation exclusives, because, for example, Horizon, I know I just want to experience that, and then continue to play some Call of Duty rounds like in between, or wait for Destiny 2 and sink a lot of time in that, while they, well, yeah, do a little bit of a vacation to Detroit Become Human if that releases at the end of the year. Still hope that
I
it
just got
does.
my Pro, so I'm excited.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Zach, for discussing this topic with me. Any closing thoughts or?
No, I mean, I like I said, I mean, I really enjoy Sony single player games. I just like if Death Stranding doesn't end up being sort of a hybrid MMO type experience, I would like them to see them to do something like that, just because I think that the capability that they have in terms of their IPs, what they already have going for them, I think they have a lot of different things they could do there, and it could be really, really big. And I think that since they already have the single player market covered in terms of distinguishing their platforms, they really have a lot of leeway with what they could do, and I would like to see them experiment at least once just to see sort of what they could do, how big they can make it, and just bring in the cash as well. So
Yeah. It's it's cool to see them going this way.
Yep.
Anyway, like the video if you did, subscribe for way more gaming discussions. We got a lot of up. I even put them in a playlist, so you can check them out if you want. Thanks a lot. Like the video if you did, and we will speak to you next time. Goodbye.
goodbye.